All right. All right. Mine is kind of one of those conversations where it's more of we go through that process, and especially where we have 2 new board members. If you guys at any point feel like you want a little bit more, just talk to me, and I'll set up a time to meet with you. Let's talk a little bit more in depth. Today's just more of a review of kind of your roles and responsibilities. Included in the board packet is the video training that I would just recommend you watch. It's about 6 minutes, and then there's a PowerPoint. Just some, or a paper with just some basic stewardship things that you need to remember and realize. This money comes in board docs. In board docs. So in the end, you have a responsibility / stewardship for more or less helping to manage and support school community councils and using that money to support their schools. And your purpose and greatest thing to look for is what they're doing meeting the greatest academic need of the school, okay? So a couple years ago, Julie and I have been working through a few things, and we created this basic rubric. This is only for us in Provo School District to just say, is it, in a way for us to give feedback to the schools, okay? So as you read through that plan, does it have a clear plan? And is it clearly detailed out as to how they're going to use that money? And have they clearly articulated how they're going to spend that money? And then at the very end of that, it says, if there's a way to get more money, or they get more money from trust lands, do they have an alternate plan to be able to spend that money as well? One thing to just be aware of is that down here it kind of explains that 10%. They try not to carry over 10%. This year is a unique year because a lot of their monies have been tied to paraeducators, working with interventions and other needs that way. They haven't been able to spend all that money, so there's more money in that trust lands to carry over. Schools are wrestling with how to manage that. I've got Stephanie looking into whether we can carry over more money without ending up on an audit finding, but we don't know yet, and as I get more information, I'll report back to you about where that's at, okay? So when you get these plans come the end of March, 1st of April, the schools that you'll be assigned to, read through the plan, and then just go through, and this is just basic feedback for the schools to say, it's clear enough that I'm good, and I will support it and sign up, okay? Now, if you have clear questions, write them on the side. We'll work with Kelsey to get this information back to the school. They'll make the adjustments. Then in the May board meeting, we'll approve and say they've made their adjustments, we approve them. At that point, we send it back to the state, and then the state reviews them, and then they're finalized in June as okay, these plans are good, we're ready to go. They've made all the corrections they need to, and we can submit them to the state, and then the funding comes to us in the July budgets. That makes sense. Is that clear, kind of how that works? Yeah.
Who's the new Julie that you
remember? Rebecca said she was going to be taking that off. Okay. That's good point. One other piece to this is sometimes amendments have to be made. And if those amendments are just minor changes, a lot of times I'll work directly with Rebecca, and then she'll somehow communicate out, or I'll communicate out, hey, we've made these changes, we've approved them. It doesn't need to go clear before the whole board to have this big, long process taken through. But if they're changing their goals and a lot of budget items, then that's where we'll typically bring that to everybody to have the conversation, make sure that it's being addressed that way. And this is just something that you guys have just asked me to negotiate and manage on the site so that it's being efficient with your time. Okay?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that when we read these goals, it's not our decision to change. Like, we may not like what they're doing. This is what the community council has decided what they want to do. We're just making sure that it's fitting under
those criteria that you have in your board packet.
Right.
And one of the pieces to that, Melanie, is down here Julie asked that we add this piece that says schools have different budgets, and so their greatest academic need might be being met through other funds. Right? They may be giving money through 0060 or their TSSA money, that it's actually taking care of another need. So what we're saying is that the principals are verifying this is the next greatest academic need that this funding will support. And this right here is the principal saying, I acknowledge that this is the greatest academic need these funds are taking care of. Does that make sense? That's what this line is for, and that's the principal's responsibility. Because you won't know that, we trust the principals to do that. Okay? Any other questions with that? Okay, That's it. And Gina and Terry, honestly, if you need more time or more conversation, talk to me. Let's find time and we'll sit down and go through more conversation around it,
But we
okay?
need to go to the schools in our district and do this with each one of them?
So I'll get you the plans.
Okay.
You'll review them and just give them some feedback as to what they need to make sure.
So I go through without them and fill it out, and then I meet with them and talk to them about it?
No.
You get it
no,
back to
no, no,
me?
No.
Ah,
Get it back to me, and then I'll get it back to the principals and say, these are the things that Gina is recommending you clearly, you address in your plan, and then we'll go from there.
okay.
Does that work?
And you're welcome to attend any community council meetings. So if you want to go to your school community council meetings and help with forming the plan and all that, you absolutely can. That's an option too.
And I would encourage it. Anytime you can go to community council, it's great, because you'll get a flavor of what they're doing, talking through. And this money is really impactful money that they use at every school. Provo High, I think, was almost $250,000 this last year. So it's a good chunk of money that they're using. Okay? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Anne Marie.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Bonnie, are you going to project mine? Okay. I can try if you want me to.
Alex, you'd be awesome now if you were using a PC.
Done. I would be off it if I was a PC, seriously.
I'll jump into my topic. I'm just here to update you on several changes that have come to the elementary sex education program in Utah in our district. So if you are like me, in around 1980, I sat in the Mazer School library and went to fellow, are you an Eagle or Mustang? I went to Mazer and I got to teach there, yeah. So I sat there with my mom for a maturation program delivered by a school nurse, and it was quiet and people were whispering. There have been some changes from that, height, etc. Again, schools can kind of make some decisions alone on this, but let me start from the very beginning. It really starts with standards. So the state last year redid the health standards. Our sex education curriculum comes from the Utah State Board of Education, like all of our teaching standards. The State Office of Education decides the what, the content of what is taught. So there's a health course in high school and middle school, and now in elementary. It used to be in 5th and 6th. You may remember that there were maturation programs, so to speak, in both. If you'll go to the next slide for me. They are now fully involved, again, just in 5th grade in elementary schools, and I'll show that to you in a moment. Something, again, it is part of just the health curriculum, standards related to maturation and or sex. But Utah is still an opt-in state for this, so parents have to opt in. It's not even an opt-out. Parents have to sign the paper allowing their student to go to this instruction if they want to.
Is that for secondary as well? or just
It is.
elementary?
It's K-12. We get a pretty good return rate on it, and what I'm going to show you today we're proposing is we're putting all the materials out so the parents can look at all the materials themselves prior, hopefully to be a little relieved that this is not not problematic and it's not extreme. And also that if they, hopefully, they want to pre-teach, post-teach, or co-teach with the presentation, they can review it with their own children. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So here are in red at the bottom, the old human development or maturation standards from the old health core. These 3 basic areas. So again, the endocrine system, structures of reproductive systems, and hygiene practices, so to speak. Next slide, please. These are the new. So there's now 6 strands that go from K to 12 in the health standard. And the last strand is human development. These are the new standards that we're teaching to. Again, talking about the timing of puberty, structures of the reproductive and endocrine systems, body changes related to reproduction, the physical social and emotional changes that accompany it. This is a new one, ways to identify trusted adults with whom they can have further conversations. And then, interestingly, even in 5th grade, there is, you've heard of legislation on Capitol Hill about consent. This is, I think, to a degree, going after the same notion of helping students understand their power to say no to situations. So this is the new curriculum here. If you'll go to the next slide, please. This is the old 6th grade standards. So there were additional ones in talking about emotional changes, relationships, physical changes, and hygiene. If I go to the next, these are the new 6th grade standards, and you can see it's not, we don't see much sex education content. They're looking at different body systems, good hygiene, there's lots of good hygiene. If you've ever gone to a 6th grade classroom after recess or gym, there's one particular hygiene thing that all 6th grade teachers talk about. And then again, that kind of leading to consent, and not even necessarily just to sex per se, but helping students be safe and recognize their control of their bodies. So that's how the standards have changed. So that's impacted how we need to teach those standards. And again, districts are typically responsible for the curricula, where state is responsible for the standards. Next slide, please. So a few challenges of what we saw in the past were scheduling problems. So again, when you have the typical maturation programs, which we've done for years, we have scheduled primarily with the female groups, nurses to go, and primarily with the male groups, we've identified several employees within the district. It might be a social worker, it might be a coach, it might be a psychologist. Frankly, it was getting really difficult to find enough male presenters. They already had jobs, and again, it's 13 schools and 2 programs. It was becoming quite a challenge. Additionally, we were paying those employees additionally to go provide these presentations in the schools. We are all concerned about making sure we're giving consistent messaging, consistent instruction, and really aligned with the state requirements. This is probably the most regulated curricular content of any area we have. So we really needed to make sure that happened. And again, we had a script with a PowerPoint that they would go through, but naturally people go off script, and there were a few instances that raised some concern for some people. And then the last one, just a general feeling that that maybe mystery and secrecy of going in a special room, and some kids have their moms or dads, and some don't have anybody, and what are they learning over there? The new standards have us teaching anatomy, male and female anatomy, to both groups. It's the presentations we have, the new structure is a video presentation. And there's one for an audience of females, there's one for an audience of males. They could both be shown if at some point the school or whomever wanted to combine groups for that. So what we've done next slide please, Brian. Our solution is we've produced a product that better meets the needs. It's again aligned to those new state standards. It's digital. Davis School District was very generous in letting us use many of the materials they produced. There is a little bit of a wave now across the state to make these presentations digital, that there is a basic presentation. The classroom teacher or a nurse or a principal could be the facilitator of that event. Doesn't mean they're uninvolved. We need to give them a little bit of training on how to facilitate that presentation. It can be shown to teachers, again, in regular class instruction if a school chooses. Again, schools still have some freedom in determining how they want to present it. Some schools have a strong PTA interest or PTO interest in the maturation program, and they could simply use this presentation there. Some schools are saying, hey, we don't have as many parents come, it becomes a have not, and it's help. Let's just teach it like we teach normal things in the classroom. It takes away that whole issue of scheduling. They can do it whenever they want. And again, then we have a committee. The state several years ago, maybe 7 years ago, required districts to have sex education curriculum review committees. And there are very tight responsibilities for that. One of them is if any outside group, outside the district wants to present on any sex education related topic, and you can think we've in the past had some people talking about pornography and maybe that's related to it, or they've been talking about birth control, that may be part of it. This committee is required to vet and recommend or not recommend these outside providers. However, it wasn't necessarily required by this because it was internal. We still wanted to inform that group that has representation from across the district, and they recommended that we proceed with the use of this new product. Next slide, please. So we now have all those resources, again, for teachers and parents all in one place. So at any point, a teacher or a parent could go and review the resources. Bonnie, will you click on the teacher resource first, please? Thank you. So this is on our website. It shows the standards. And if you would go down, please. Sorry, I'm keeping Bonnie way too busy on this. Oh, no worries.
I've got her to help me too.
Can you scroll down? Thank you so much. So those maturation videos are now here. We have them, we have Spanish subtitles in both of them. We have all of the consent forms here so parents understand what they're agreeing or not to. And then we have some resources here. Oftentimes in those programs, students were given samples of products, deodorant, sanitary pads, different things like that. The primary sponsor of that over the last couple of years has been Procter & Gamble, and they haven't been quite as, it used to be assuredly we could get what we asked for. But we put those resources there so that people can seek, and we can add any other companies want to provide products or samples. We also are including additional material that, again, parents or teachers might be able to give. If a parent wanted more resources, a teacher could direct a parent to some of these resources. If you have any interest, you have this presentation in board docs. You can watch the videos in full. Each of them is approximately 30 minutes. And you know, I think that they really do a great job. It's based around a lot of kids having conversation. There is a group of students, and it's male and female, and I think they address it realistically and also scientifically and, you know, as biology and health. If you wanted to see any of those, I'm happy to have you play any, but in the interest of time, maybe we'll delay that.
So these are elementary?
Yeah, so these are the fifth grade. This is
Fifth grade.
only fifth grade, yeah. This is the elementary page, so sixth grade won't have it anymore.
Okay.
There are sections like this for the middle school and high school health courses. In that case, the state health curriculum committee has helped develop some resources. And then our district, if you'll remember, about 8 years ago, a committee that was led by by the PTA and by social workers within the district, they adopted a curriculum for our district, and those two resources are primary resources. And again, it's quite spelled out. It's on our website. I could send you those links if you're interested to
Yes,
see what they
please.
have.
Thank you.
Sure. Would you go to the parent page? If you go back and then choose the parent link. Thank you. It's very similar. So parents can read, here are the standards that are being taught in this grade. And then at the bottom again, they can view the videos in full. They have the consent forms, and then they have direct access to those resources as well. That's essentially the presentation. We wanted to make you aware of that. If you have any questions now, I'm happy to answer them, or if you'd like to talk later, please let me know.
Sorry, this is my wheelhouse, not sex, but sex ed.
Great.
So, I know there were changes, I wasn't, I mean, I've been forever since I was doing that, teaching this stuff, but, so do they do it in fifth grade and sixth grade?
They used to. There used to be those standards in sixth grade, but the rewrite as of last year of the state standards removed the sex ed content from sixth grade.
Okay,
So now it's taught in one grade in elementary, one grade in middle, one grade in high school.
okay, and they each have their own pages that you just showed on the district. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And the health, again, because it had these state resources, it's, and there's only one health teacher at each site, so our health specialist works directly with them. They're very familiar with the content. This is going to all fifth grade teachers and schools, so we've developed more supports in it for a variety of teachers.
So how are the teachers feeling? Do we know, are they comfortable with this? The elementary teachers, I'm guessing the health teachers in middle and high school are probably okay with it, but how about our elementary?
Yeah. So we told them that Monday is the day we can start this. The feedback, we had teachers on that committee, we have teachers on the sex education curriculum review materials committee, and they felt like the content was great. They liked the presentation. We have not broadly advertised this yet amongst them because of the issue of wanting to make sure that the board, while formal approval isn't needed, we wanted to make you aware of those changes. But I expect, based on the past, the difficulty in acquiring presenters and the difficulty in scheduling. And some schools, I mean, we have different cultures at different schools, and some are, for lack of a better term, wanting to go a little more progressive, away from the very special time in the media center with pink tablecloth and cookies afterwards, to just like, we're learning about health today and this is the next section. So we're anxious to get some feedback. A presentation very similar to this is given in some schools in Alpine, and there are 2 other districts, which I can't remember, and Davis. And they have told us they get good feedback from it. I think that there is for some who've taught a long time and are accustomed to a different culture, or a little bit like, I don't want to answer questions on this. But as some of the mental health employees on the committee have talked to us and state officials have talked to us, a student might be more apt to have a relationship with their classroom teacher more so than a visiting nurse, and maybe knowing, okay, that's a person I can go say, I need to talk to somebody about this. So while we expect that some teachers will have some level of discomfort, we're not dictating how it has to happen. The grades can still get together and say, hey, principal, will you do the girls' presentation, and one of the fifth grade male teachers will do a male presentation.
So they're still gonna separate them?
It's set that there is a male and a female. You could just do both. That's about an hour's worth of video, or in one classroom. So it could go that extreme, or you could continue to break into male-female groups, which I think many will want to start with. Again, we just need to provide facilitator training, which will also come on this teacher site, for how that operates. So principals and teachers know there are some rules in the law about what can and can't be talked about and how you respond. So it's essentially training facilitators to, that's a great question, I'm so glad you're thinking about that. Who's a trusted adult you could go to? On some of the more sensitive issues, so that would accompany this.
Sorry, one more question.
Of course.
Do we have a district or state policy on how we approach LGBTQ issues?
Yeah, good point. Our diversity committee has been working to develop strategies kind of across the board. So the health curricula here, you saw those standards don't necessarily make an identification for any of those. And it sometimes may lead more into the social emotional learning, about learning about oneself and developing. So I think it's an area we both have to be aware of. I know that this afternoon I'm hoping to participate in a training at Dixon, on LGBTQ issues. I think it's something that, as there may be, I would say straight speaking from the state. The state, a few years ago, only about 4 years ago, teachers were not allowed to address LGBTQ issues at all. They couldn't speak to it. They can now give sort of brief responses to, they can address. If you read the law, you'll see it's not open forum, but it no longer has to be avoided at all costs, which I think was pretty damaging to many of our students. I think as I've watched the videos with that lens, I think that it addresses that human development enough, and puberty is the start of your body changing to an adult. And it affects your mind and your brain too. And I think it would provide students opportunities, again, with that additional standard about, here's how you talk to a trusted adult, and who can I go, maybe it's my parent, maybe it's my aunt, maybe it's my gym teacher, whoever it is. So I think it opens the door and it helps students who may be struggling with some sort of identity, or they have an identity and they need to know how to better work it socially. I hope that we can be as responsive to the needs of those students as we can, and I think that this is, while not directly related to it, I think it's neutral to support it.
So transgender youth, if they split it into male and female, do they get to choose which one they look
It's
to?
not dictated in there, but I would hope that we would, or I would hope that, I think of my time as a principal, and there was one year where we had a student who identified as non-gender. She was born female and was not sure he now wanted to call himself a she or a he. In this case, I think I would have talked with the teachers and said, should we have a session where we show up, kind of mixed sessions to make that more comfortable. So there's a lot of allowance for individual sites and ways to present it. And again, a parent, if they're concerned about the presentation, might choose to use these resources to do it on their own.
Or opt their kid out to do them?
Yeah, I think it's one of those issues we really want to be aware with and partner with student services and have resources available directly to students for issues related to sexual orientation and gender identity.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Emery.
I just forwarded to the board this presentation from Emery. It did not get into board docs, but you have it in your email.
Okay, next, Doug.
Maybe just quickly, just in transition, I appreciate Gina's questions. This is a perfect example of the work we did as a district back in the fall, and I know we have a couple of new board members, including Gina, that this work in gender inclusion, it really does make us challenge those ideas about just binary options, right? Whether that be in a master schedule of girls' classes, boys' classes, or presentation sessions. So, this is certainly cutting-edge stuff that we're wanting to work on, and we look forward to working with you as a board as we develop more thoughtful and appropriate procedures moving forward. So it's nice to know that there's some interest and some background that this group moving forward will continue to utilize that with the party. So anyway, I'm just going to get out of the way here because, again, it's actually kind of exciting to have an opportunity to talk to you in student services about something besides COVID. So we have spent a considerable amount of time in student services for some time working toward all things safety and security. We saw that in Stephanie's budget earlier, where she talked about money that's been set aside, that's working towards some considerable effort. You saw a little bit in Chad's work, where we talked about surveillance and et cetera, et cetera. So this is a piece that is really important to us. So I'm going to take it in the lines here and turn it over to Jason Garrison and his team, who have worked diligently to propose some next steps we might take even this spring to take some progress off of something that's been talked about for some time and bring the new two couple of board members up to speed on all the initiatives we have as priorities moving forward with safety and security. So I think you're up first. Thank you, Charity.
Hey there. Okay, so for those of you that are aware, in 2018 we received a COPS grant from the Community-Oriented Policing Services that we use to upgrade some of our safety a comprehensive needs assessment. Is it better if I take my mask off?
Yes.
Okay. A comprehensive needs assessment survey at all of our district sites. We got the results of that survey last January, so about a year ago. And we got to work on some of their priority items that they listed for our schools. The top priority item they noticed that we were lacking was a visitor management system. They also recognized that we were missing a reunification system. So, and that would be something that would be employed if we had a major emergency and had to get kids home to their families where we may not be located at our school. So we had some money in that grant set aside to address some of the high priority items. And we did our research and found that the Raptor system was the one that best met our needs because it did both. It has the visitor management portion and the reunification portion. We haven't gone too far into it with the reunification portion. We're going to just start with the visitor management side, but later on you'll know why some of the things that we've built into it are important. So just to update you on the system. Scott, do you want to, we're going to play the video because it's kind of the Raptor system in a nutshell, and then we'll open it up to questions from you.
Provo City School District uses the Raptor Visitor Management System to help maintain a safe environment at each of our schools. When you enter any of our schools, you must report to a designated visitor station, usually right inside the entrance of the school. Your school will have signs letting you know where this is, as well as simple steps to follow. Once you have reported to the designated visitor station, you will be asked to present your valid government-issued ID, such as a driver's license. It's important to remember to bring your ID when visiting the school. After providing your ID, it will be scanned into our Raptor system. Raptor then checks through its database for individuals prohibited from visiting school grounds. Any issues that are identified will be handled discreetly by a school administrator in accordance with school district policy. If you are cleared by the Raptor system, the system will print a visitor badge that you are to wear at all times during your visit. The badge will include your name and a photo, as well as the date, time of entry, and your destination within the building. The Raptor system and the school district do not use your personal information for any other purpose, so there is no reason to worry about privacy. When you have finished visiting the school, we ask you to stop by the office and turn in your badge. This way we can check you out of the system. The scanning process takes less than a minute, and it's time well spent to ensure a high level of security in our schools.
So we have the system here. I have Scott here if we have questions. We could pop it up there so you could see what it looked like from the secretary's end if you want. There's a copy of our timeline in your board docs, right, Barney? And some frequently asked questions, but right now it's your time just to kind of lay it on us if you have questions. Jennifer.
Okay, so it said in the video that when I scan your badge, it prints out where you're going. So when do they have the opportunity? So you stick your ID in, then are you talking to the secretary through an intercom or?
Absolutely. That's the one part we had Shauna doing the voiceover. So when you go into the school, the system will be set up on a little table. You've probably seen the tables kind of built into most of the schools because we are pretty much ready to go. And then there's a call button. So the call button has a bubble camera on it. Scott, can you pull up what the camera feed would look like at one of the schools? The call button has a camera on it so the secretary can see you. And that way, if it's, say for example, the FedEx guy's coming in, he could just simply show his badge because he's probably laden with heavy packages and drop them in the main office. And then she will run the system, and she asks me where I'm going, who I'm here to see. Another part of it is, say you're there to check out your child, or somebody's there to check out your child. You could say, I'm here to check out my child. Drop your ID in so we can scan it. we'll match it with the database of who you guys said could pick up your children and take it from there. Or you just say, I'm here to volunteer in my son's class or eat lunch with him, whatever that might be. So is this Rock Canyon?
Yes.
So Rock Canyon has a tendency to move these signs because we're not using the system right now. So the signage is blocking you, that's their hand sanitizer thing right now. But yeah, it's got a pretty good view of that lobby. The little desk that I was using is right here. And so all of the lobbies have a good wide view of their lobbies.
So Gina has a question for you, but
Go ahead.
before you call on Gina, I want to say, one of the reasons we wanted you to see this today was because this is going to be piloted, sorry, and I won't take away all the details on that, that's yours.
Yeah.
But I want to read to you a portion of an email I got from a mom. Under the guise of safety, I feel like you have implemented a total communist system in the school. Who gives you the permission to read my driver's license? And goes on to say a bunch of things that I've read from this person before. That individual is not at one of these first four schools, but it might be representative of a sample of our people out there. And we want you, board members, when you are aware of this and after you see this, we want you to be able to support this, because this is not an attempt at communism. It's not an attempt to turn it into a prison. It's an attempt to make sure, with an outstanding group that came in to give us feedback on the safety in our buildings, to respond to that. And really, that's all it is. So if I took anybody's thunder, I apologize, but I wanted to give you that context.
No, and we actually were going to request at some point when we do get ready to roll these out to the schools that we'd like to present to the school community council and see if you guys would be interested in participating at your schools. Gina, what's your question?
Has there been any discussion surrounding the potential impact this may have on our Latinx community, particularly undocumented?
Yes, absolutely. We went into this with great detail. Jason, jump in if I miss anything.
Great.
So first of all, we called in Liz Robles, who's at the Student Services Building. We called in Claudia, I can't remember Claudia's name. She works with our diversity and equity department. And migrant families. And then they reached out to Franklin Elementary, perhaps one of our most impacted with, not even impacted, has a greater population of our minority families. So we brought them in and we started asking these questions. And at first we were all nervous about that. We don't want our families to not feel like they have access to their students. We even attempted to come up with some ideas where we could create an ID for them to go through the system. What we learned in the process is that in the past year or so, the district has been asking for an ID to register students for school. And in this past time frame, Franklin Elementary had one person that didn't have an ID of some sort. This system works with all government IDs. It even read a Guatemalan consular card that we tried in it the other day. If it's a passport, if it's some other type of ID that the system doesn't read it, we can manually enter it and give them the same privileges. Now, the one thing we have discussed at large is there is a way that you can do a manual entry into the system, but without an ID to back that up to do a name and site match of a picture. We would probably want to have those individuals escorted, just because we can't be sure that the information they're presenting is accurate. We ran a little test with the system, and there was a good reason we came up with that. We can get into that later if you want to. But any form of ID should do, and it will check against any court orders that we put in. They're called customized alerts, or the national and state sex offender registries.
So the two, Liz and Claudia, didn't seem to have any issue. They didn't
No,
think it would
in
prevent
fact, they asked us to still require it. We could come up with something for those parents that point where we require a piece of ID because it would encourage those parents to get what they need anyway to be successful in the community. They say it's not hard to get that state issued ID. It's just overcoming some fear that we could help them through.
So undocumented, I'm not educated in undocumented, but they can get a state ID if they're undocumented.
They can get a state ID if they're
We just need a
undocumented.
social number.
They have a social security number?
Yeah, social security number for the government.
No, not for a state.
What do they need then? I apologize.
I can't remember specifically, but even most of them had their IDs from their country. That worked too. So we would work with them. They would not be denied access to their students or children. They may be under an escorted situation until they could get that ID, but we figure that's going to be very few and far between. We would not, if somebody came, we had a couple of parents that Claudia reached out to. They came into the district office with different IDs. One lady was from Honduras originally, but had relocated to Guatemala. She brought in her Honduras and Guatemala IDs. If they present those and we have an accurate name and birth date that we can pull off of those, they wouldn't even be an escorted individual. It would only be for somebody who doesn't have anything.
Thank you, I appreciate that you guys have forethought with that, because I read through it last night and I was a little concerned because I wasn't sure what.
It was important to us too. We need our kids' parents to be a part of their kids' lives. Even those parents who might be sex offenders do have some rights to be with their students in the school. It can be in that escorted situation. But if it's a maturation, we just talked about that, that's been one of our examples. That mom or dad has the right to go sit next to their student and participate in that as well.
Just one last thing for me, and it's not a question, it's just kind of a statement. I'd love to have more conversations with you
Oh,
guys.
please, let's sit down and talk more, because you guys are a little behind. You haven't had all the background info.
Right.
So I'd love to get together with you.
But I'm worried, not just that I figured we'd figure out a way to get them in, but I'm worried they won't even show up because they're afraid that they're going to be reported.
Well, can I answer that one and then we'll go?
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
kind of related, but I.
Okay, so if you'll look on our timeline that we provided, on March 11th, after we get the policy and procedure approved by you guys at the board meeting, we'd like to start a kickoff campaign to start giving parents that information so that we can take some of that fear away, so that they know that there are options if they don't have ID, and just to be familiar with what these new experiences they're going to be facing in the schools. So, Jennifer,
Also, kind
does
of,
that answer that?
It was just a general statement that I wanted to just be out there, that I'm concerned about that, and I'll do my own research and stuff like that, but I'm just worried.
Okay.
well, that concern brought up the idea, maybe you were already planning on this, but that video was fantastic. If you could make one Hispanic,
Exactly.
a Hispanic person going through, and maybe the narrator gives a little more about, how the process would work to alleviate some of those fears. That would
Exactly.
be very powerful, and then the school can email that out to all their parents.
Isn't that Elizabeth's new job?
Yeah.
She'll be part of that.
We've been working on it. This was just put together like in just a couple of days time for your purposes, so you guys had an idea of it. The signage that was in there is not even the signage that we'll have. We still have to order that. We wanted to get it all approved, the policies and the procedures taken care of before we went into that stage. But yeah, this will most likely all be updated. This was for your benefit.
Thank you for listening to my question.
And let's get together and we can talk it through more, and I can give you more information on the threat assessments that were conducted. Because in addition to this, there are more things that we will be responding to regarding those threat assessments throughout many years to come and ongoing.
Thank you.
No?
Are there any other schools in the state that are piloting this as well?
Yes. They're not piloting it, they've implemented it. Park City, we've gone up to visit Park City. In fact, they gave us some good information surrounding large events. Now, we're doing ours a little differently. We have ours located in the vestibules. Park City reconstructed their whole lobbies to feed into an office, and with the resistant, bullet-resistant glass and all of that good stuff. We didn't go there.
What
We
did it
went
remind you
through
that
the
capital levies the highest?
Right, exactly. They're the ones who helped us to know that we're gonna need 3 of these setups for every school, because on a day when it's the costume parade, we're gonna need to get parents through quickly. We may even have to pre-register parents so that they're ready to go quickly when we get there. They're the ones that gave us some information on what events to apply this to, and we're still making some of those decisions. Haven't come to the final conclusions on that, but yeah, Park City's been using it. They said it was a rough go for the first couple weeks, and then everybody just kind of eased into it. Their population, however, is significantly different than ours. Nate?
Are we gonna have a tough time with like the high school? I mean, there's so many high school people. Will one machine do it, or we have 3, or?
But we have multiple machines purchased for them as well. Our plan is to initially get this rolled out at the 4 pilot schools, then to the remainder of the elementary schools. You'll see that on the timeline. Then we'll get going into those secondary locations, probably starting with the middle schools and IHS first, then Provo High. Timpview, we need to get it a little further into its construction state where we're at right now. However, we are prepared that we may have 2 doors that are set up at Timpview, or maybe even 3 that people might be buzzed through and have to come and get their special reserve badges.
Are you gonna go to the LI classes and coordinate?
The LIA class,
The Latinos in Action?
at the secondary schools?
Well,
Yeah.
when you go to educate the parents about this program, are you planning on going to the LIA classes?
We haven't specifically mentioned the LIA classes, but I'm sure that would come up. We were pretty much going to work through with Brian Yaffe and the diversity and equity, so I'm sure that would have been right in his wheelhouse to do that. So.
We also.
But we are writing that down right now so that we know that that's an option.
Sorry to interject, we also plan to meet, or at least have a little time at each of the school community councils as well. And that's on the time.
Yes. No?
Going back to Park City, did they have any trouble with parents?
They said they did have a couple of grumpy parents, but once they sat down and explained the need for it and how it's keeping their children safe, that most of the people came around. I have a feeling we're going to have a conversation with the friend Pete was talking about, and there might be some cultural issues in that situation that we can address as well.
I was going to add to that as well. As we were installing some of the system and doing some test trials with it during the summertime, we actually had a number of parents that would come in, and it was actually quite interesting to see how excited they were for this, for the safety of their kids and stuff, knowing that we were implementing this kind of a system. So.
We do anticipate, like, some of the moms that are in the school every day when they're trying to carry a heavy load of cupcakes in for the class party, you know, if they've checked in once, they could press that button and the secretary could manually check them in if their arms are full and we could get them through. We do want to stay pretty close to keeping the IDs at most of the times, frankly at all times if possible, because we never know when a status is going to change. This system not only protects against breeds the sex offender registries, but when there is a custody thing and the mom or dad has a no-see order, we can put in that custom alert. And if somebody were always used to letting that parent in because they're frequent flyers and they suddenly weren't supposed to be in, this will help us protect against that as well. That's why we hope to always use the IDs, but there are those situations where we're going to have to be humans and just take care of our people.
So I'm just going to recommend, in addition to school community council, that when you're ready to implement in the school, also visit the PCAs or
Yes.
PCOs, because they're great advertisers for you.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Any other questions, any other concerns? No? Gina and Terry, my name is Charity Williams, so my email is charityw@provo.edu. Jason Garrison's in the back, he's Jason G.
Jason, yeah.
Yeah, at provo.edu. Scott's back there. He's S. Chandler, if you guys want to reach out to any of us to get
Or you
more
can just send
information.
something to Doug, and you get forwarded on.
Pardon? Or, oh, yes. Oh, that's true. Jason, did you have any?
Yeah, just real quick, first of all, amazing job, Charity, thank you for owning this presentation. For the last couple of years, you and Scott have done an amazing job as the frontiers of this project. It was supposed to be initiated or at least attempt to be implemented a few months ago, or beginning of the school year. But of course, we've been dealing with something else. But Doug's amazing leadership and our committee, Lauren, Charity, Scott, Clint, looking at it from the student data privacy aspects, looking at all of those kind of legal aspects, as well as we've reached out, and we still, part of our little subcommittee is our SRO.
Oh, that's right.
We have someone from Superintendent Cox's office, Jared Seitz, helping us with some of the HR. So it's being vetted and a lot of eyes, but a lot of the nuts and the bolts of it are being looked at more than just maybe the 4 or 5 that are in here. We're trying to make sure every aspect, kind of like the way we do with the COVID safety meeting, where we have everybody's voice at the table. We're kind of taking a similar approach with this, since it is a large systems cultural change of the way we do business. I think just the final thing is, this is hopefully isn't it's not looked at as an attempt to catch anyone by any means, right? It's a deterrent, it's a safety measure. We need to know who's in our buildings at all times. And that's not just from I hate to use the word, a bad person situation, but in case there's an emergency. And it's not, we need to know who is in our buildings or our facilities at all times. If we have search and rescue coming, I gotta be able to tell them, or the school, like, wait, don't forget these 3 people who were meeting in the conference room, and things like that, right? Or these 2 people were up on the roof working on an HVAC system, whatever it may be, right? So it's a bigger picture than just checking front door ID. It's also maintaining the safety and security of who should be in our buildings, but also just that overall awareness of who is in our buildings at all times in case of that emergency that does take over. So,
Do you
anyway.
guys want to see a quick side of the back end of it, what does it look like, or do you feel comfortable enough as it is? You're good?
Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. Carol, foundation.
Let's be really quick. Each year the foundation has a golf tournament, and so this year we wanted to let you guys know about it a little bit ahead of time. I know the foundation board really wanted to try to work this year and years going forward, to really involve the district administration and the school board a little bit more, if you guys are able and willing to participate. And it's not even necessarily golfing. We have things that driving carts around, handing out drinks, cookies, treats, those types of things. You can golf if you want. It's just an opportunity for these companies and these people that are coming into golf and donate money to the foundation to be able to meet everybody at the district level and talk, and it makes them feel a little bit more special. So this year the golf tournament's on June 15th. It's a Tuesday. Golfing starts at 8 in the morning. As of right now, we're planning on just having a normal golf tournament where we have 18 holes. We have the carts and everything. The one last year got changed a little bit because of COVID and the restrictions the golf course had. So I don't know, we'll know as it gets closer, we still have those. It's at, what's it called, Timpanogos Golf Club. It used to be the East Bay Golf Course. They just changed the name. And so we want to invite you guys to that and let you know about that. We can reach out with more details as it gets closer. If you have any questions, let me or Doug know. Or Jennifer, she's on the foundation board as well, and we can answer those. So,
Is there a fee?
not for, if you're wanting to golf, what we usually try to do, or what company has asked us to do, is partner a district official with their team, so they'll pay the fee, and we'll place you on a team with them. If you're not golfing, or if we don't have enough teams that want to do that, you guys want to golf, district people, we just charge the greens fee, which is around like $30.
Caleb, have you outlined how the day normally progresses, like there's a lunch, that kind of thing?
So this year golfing starts at 8, so we usually start registration at 7. We have breakfast there, and as people show up, they talk, mingle. Some people go to the driving range or the practice greens to mess around until golfing starts. The golf course takes care of getting all the carts and organizing what holes they start on, things like that. So they'll announce over their intercom system when it's time to go to their car and start going. And then use golf. It usually takes about 4 hours for them to do the whole 18 holes. We'll have foundation members, some of you guys, if you're there to do it, driving golf carts around with drinks and snacks, things like that have been donated. And we take pictures, we make videos, all that stuff. Then afterwards, there's a lunch. So everybody comes in and finishes golfing. When they're done golfing, eats lunch. We usually have some giveaways that we give. We just have a drawing of people's names that have come there. And we talk a little bit about Camp Big Spring, since most of the money's there to write scholarships to Big Spring students when camp's happening. And so it's just fun. It takes, I think we're there at 7 for the beginning of registration. We're there from 7 to 1:30, and it's a good time. It depends on, if you're just doing the foursome, it's $500. There's different sponsorship levels. There's a tournament sponsor for $1,500, and that gets you a foursome and signage. There's another major sponsor, $1,000, then just the foursome is $500, and a group of 2 is $250.
I just want to add, we do want more teams to participate than we have so far. So if you do know anybody, whether they own a business or just individuals who you could encourage to participate, pay the fees and come golf, we've got capacity for
we
10 more teams.
We could probably do up to 32 teams. We could double the holes, is what the golf course has told me. We've never gotten anywhere near that. But we have room to do more if we get more people. But somebody that wants to, just have them reach out to me, or you can reach out to me, and we'll get in touch with them.
I appreciate that you're offering this, because I think in the past for me, I didn't know where, as a board member, am I supposed to be there, am I not supposed to be there? So I appreciate that you are doing this.
And Steph can talk about a little bit. She was there last year, and people enjoyed being able to talk to her as she was the business administrator for the district. And I don't know what type of conversations you had, but we heard afterwards that people really liked that she was there to be able to interact with somebody at the district
Because I was
office.
so entertained.
Stephanie also bought
Such a great golfer.
she bought a large number of mulligans, which helped to pay off the fee as well.
Yeah, we sell mulligans, so people can buy as much as they want. We actually make probably enough to send 4 or 5 kids to camp every year just off the mulligans that people buy. So it's a good day.
It's a mulligan's a redo.
Yeah.
Right? I'll read it.
Yeah, you get another shot.
How often I golf.
Use that in all types of areas of life, besides golf, right? I think give me more than
I go to driving ranges and that's. I'm gonna do that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Caleb.
COVID update.
You want to start this, or do you want to?
Who wants to take the fun? Go ahead.
Okay, so we added this just to give you a few minutes to just kind of have a kick-around discussion. Do you have in your board packet the data that Todd compiled? So, well, yeah, you can do that. And
Or Bonnie, do you want to airplay that?
feel free, Bonnie, to display that if you don't mind. After we're done here today, Caleb, you'll get that on the website, please.
Yeah.
As you know, this data, the idea for this came from the fact that in our safety committee meetings that Jason runs, over the last, especially, I would say it's been really stark in the last maybe 3-4 weeks. Meeting after meeting after meeting, we're seeing that overall the trend has suggested a downward slope, which means decreasing cases and therefore potentially decreasing peril as being exposed to this in our schools. So I asked Todd if he would please put this together so that you would have this context as we start to consider things. This probably started with a discussion about test to stay, and we've done some research on test to stay. And you remember we talked about that at the last business meeting. We've kind of suspended our pursuit of that. We're waiting to find out what comes from the legislature. But the question has been asked, and I was actually asked by one teacher. I'm sure you've been asked by a number of people in the community. Are things getting better enough to return to school full time? I'm not going to answer that question for you, but I am going to suggest to you that if you look at these trends on these three graphs, things are significantly improving. And they improve pretty much every week. And this is day-by-day trends since the beginning, since the return to school after the winter break, so January 4th. So with that said, it's yours to discuss.
I'm gonna just let Jason, would you mind just telling him what Suzanne Livingston said about numbers, like how it doesn't affect the 14-day window? What happened today during our meeting?
Yeah, she just reemphasized a couple of important items that she felt for schools. Most of the changes to the state public health order, the executive order.
Just quickly, Suzanne Livingston is, she's
sorry.
over school nurses for the county health department. She attends a lot of our safety committee meetings and advises us on behalf of the health department.
Yeah, she provides us pretty much direct access to the local health department, so it's really nice to have her part of our team and our committee. As you know, the state public health order gets renewed every couple of months. Because they don't want to obviously predetermine things way too far out, but yet they want to have some sort of guideline and restriction and expectations. So one came out, superintendent sent it to us about close to midnight on Monday, I think, because it was about to expire. And then, so one came out, and then 2 days later, they had another version. They had left out some language and some important emphasized points where they want to make it more clear. And one of the items is that excuse me, let's make sure I get it correctly, is that the threshold, the outbreak threshold, right now is still at the state level, being discussed on what the outbreak threshold percentage should be. There's a bill that's indicating it should be at 2%, or keep it at the 1%, and that's the debate, right, for the test to stay. They did indicate in here that the expectation is no longer for the LEA to decide how many student percentage of the population, 70%, NEBO did a few, a couple did 80%, they said 60%. 60% for test to stay would be 60%, right? They have eliminated the option in this state public health order and in the CDC school manual. They've eliminated the option of transitioning back through phases. That was a third option at one point, where LEAs could discuss a hybrid, modified, alternative schedule opposed to the full-time schedule. That is no longer available according to this state public health order. Now it's, if you hit the outbreak threshold, which is right now it's 1%, then you would be allowed to choose, as an LEA, you choose the test to stay. If you got your 60% and less than 2.5% came out positive out of that 60%, you can just keep in the school learning.
LEA means Local Education Association.
Thank you. The board basically gets to decide that, right? You could decide right out of the gate, hopefully in consultation and collaboration with the local state health department, that if it was a significant enough outbreak, you could choose just to go to 10 days straight remote learning. That's really choice number one. Choice number two is the test to stay, which 60% of your student and staff enrollment would have to participate, and then hopefully you have less than 2.5% testing positive, and then obviously those that didn't test and those that were positive would stay home, and the remaining will obviously can stay in school learning. So that's kind of that test to stay breakdown that they redefined in here a little bit. One of the, yes ma'am?
Didn't they say that those who didn't test could keep going to school
No.
as long as the 2.5, so did they change that after the 2
Yes.
days? Okay.
They're not, you choose not to test. So staff members don't have to. For the test to stay, staff members are counted as part of the greater than 1,500 or lower than 1,500, part of the threshold, outbreak threshold, but they don't have to test. They can, as long as monitor their symptoms and go through the process. They're not required to test or be part of that 60% percentage testing. Okay? They don't have to be. It's just the student population.
Where are we testing, about 30% right now, 25%?
About what?
Of our students each week?
Our testing?
Yeah.
We're a little over 500 every Monday right now.
Okay. So So
Oh,
that's
is
20.
that 60%?
Yeah. So we had to bump that up by 2/3, pretty much.
No, so Pro High, for example, is, if you count their enrollment and staffing, they're about 21. So they're 2,100, so they're 1%, they would need 21 positives to be on that outbreak threshold.
No, I mean, the athletes that are tested on Monday mornings, how much of a percentage of the enrollment is that? That was consistently.
So
25%, 500 out to 2,000.
Is it 60%?
No, it's not 60%, it's about 20,
About 25%.
25%. Now, that's not all the extracurriculars, it's only the ones that are in season or actually
Yeah.
actively participating in their extracurriculars.
And spring sports are a little bit more.
They're about,
Numbers are gonna
take
go up.
off.
They're
So,
about to start.
you know, we drop off with wrestling and swimming,
Mhm.
but then we pick up both lacrosse programs, both soccer, or
Track.
one soccer. Track and field would be huge, right?
So we'll probably be at about half
So
the
it
number
could be,
already.
it could be. If both schools were to actually do every single extracurricular participant that they've shared with us, Dr. McKee, what's it like 1,500 to 1,700, I think, right? Or is it, no, less than 12 and 15, I think.
You're counting the performing arts perhaps.
Right, so you would have that if every single kid that participated.
Spring sports would be about 40%.
But the biggest one that they probably wanted to emphasize was that right now you have test to play for high school extracurricular activities. They've also now have added that LEAs can decide if they're gonna approve a dance. That was an example, was a dance, then that would be considered an extracurricular activity that would require a negative test, 48 hours, 2 days prior to the activity or to the event.
Could we combine the dance and the sports one?
So that one can be used together. However,
We wouldn't do it on a Monday, we'd have to do it on a
right,
Thursday.
but the test to play, or the extracurricular testing, I think you've heard of test to sway, right, dance, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's better.
Test to play, test to stay, those positives do not count towards your outbreak number.
So our 14-day window shrinks,
Yeah,
huge, because it doesn't go against.
that's huge.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
that-
huge, I know.
That's the current policy right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the one that
That's
just
the-
got put in
that
Just on it.
Wednesday
Okay,
night.
so we won't have the terrible Monday when, oh, shoot, we only had one, I think.
Well, yeah, lately, even though, I mean, like, at Tiffany, we did about 500 kids, and there was one positive just recently.
But that's.
But that
won't count
one
against
would
us.
not even go on the 14-day window.
So we'll never get to the threshold,
We
really.
won't.
So, right, just so you can see it, I'm not just spouting out.
You're just getting my hopes up, and then you're gonna crush them later.
I know,
Right now.
I'm so curious what the reasoning is. I don't know how we don't.
I think it's because they're identifying who is sick,
Yeah.
and they're making the school safer by identifying who it is.
Getting them out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with it. I'm 100%, that's great.
Yeah, that's a ball change.
So just so I can be clear, so it's on record, so I'm not just misquoting, positive test results from subsection 6A-I, which is high school extracurricular, athletics and performing arts and whatnot, as well as, so you have what's called reoccurring extracurricular and singular event extracurricular.
Test to sway.
Test to sway, graduation, senior dance, dinner, whatever, right? 40 hour, if it's positive test results from those subsections are not included in a school's outbreak threshold. So to make sure that's
And I would
clear.
say that at our two high schools, most of our 14-day windows have been from extracurricular.
Yeah, it's every Monday we get that.
Yeah.
Right now, we're having about averaging 1 to 2 positives right now at a 500 tests every Monday. Now, we've had an outbreak here or there that we've caught outside of a test to play, that we've tried to help that program out on another day. But as far as we've given out over, Mrs. Bryant, close to 6,000 tests. I'm guessing we've done 6 sessions at each school, well, 6 sessions at each school. About 6,000, right, 6,000 tests. And we're still at less than 1% positivity rate.
COVID's over.
Now, we've had a few outbreaks.
It's only.
So,
So how do we handle, may I have a question? Have we put any thought on to how we would handle a traditional graduation, because we obviously have to test our students, but what would we require of parents and attendees of the graduation?
We haven't pursued that yet. I think the big question is whether or not we're going to have a venue to do it. Right, that's one of the big things we have to get established first.
We're still waiting to hear from BYU, but BYU just canceled their graduation.
So it's most likely not to happen. So then, with the high school kids that came in and asked for their dances and their assemblies, if we perhaps have an assembly on Friday during school and have prom that night, then we can double up and like kill two birds with one stone and only have to attend once, right? For the two, so they can have both the assembly and the prom. It just has to happen on the same day, but it could work, right?
Same weekend. Test Thursday, assembly Friday, dinner on
Yeah,
Saturday.
Perfect.
Now, Suzanne has asked us, today in the meeting, asked us as, and I think she's just trying to get some information maybe for Alpine or Nebo, is how are we gonna handle it when a Timpview Provo High student invites a Sky Ridge Spanish Fork kid over, right, to the dance, right? This is something that Suzanne is bringing up as a, like, what if kind of thing, right?
Can you sway with somebody outside your school?
Oh, I don't know. Cross swing. But that's a reality where a lot of our kids, I know being a previous principal of high schools, either in California or here, I would sign off on that contract because from a visiting student, a non-Provo City School District student, right? And I don't have access to their red cap. I don't have red tracks to their epi tracks. You know, and we're not gonna have a nurse sitting there looking up every guest to a dance. So I'd asked Suzanne to kind of figure out what can be provided. Most of them, if they're in the red cap system, they'll get an email, put their name on it saying that they're positive or negative, right? And they would have to kind of bring it and show it kind of as a thing. But for those that may not have that, again, now we may run into allowing certain people into those activities that can't provide a test, or at least don't have epi tracks in their pocket. Yes, ma'am.
The state is covering the test cost for test to play. How about test to sway and test to stay? I know they're covering test to stay, but what about test to sway?
My understanding, I have not heard anything from the state to say that they're going to increase the number of tests they provide us for that. That doesn't mean they won't change their mind, but right now what they're providing us is test to play.
Question.
And if test to stay is enforced, then they would fund us.
So sway is the only question of
Yeah,
cost.
I haven't heard it. Here's my question though. I think it's important enough to offer these opportunities to the kids. Can we use the ESSER money to buy the test? Yeah.
If we needed to.
I think we should.
Okay.
I think so
State
too.
doesn't pay for it, we should do it.
At least one requires one.
Yes, the biggest thing will be planning in advance, making sure we have the tests and then we can get them. I mean, the very first time we tried to get them, it took a little bit of time to get our hands on them. I think they're much easier to get now, and we have some left from our employee testing that we could start with that actually are going to expire if we don't use them. So it's just planning and making sure that we plan appropriately and get things purchased and in the warehouse.
And if we switch the athletes to a Thursday instead of a Monday, then half of them would be paid for anyway.
Yeah. Yes.
Especially,
Does that test have to be in a certain window?
It's a 14-day window.
So if we tested them on Monday and the prom wasn't until Friday.
Well, that's 2 days.
No, they have to be 2 days.
How do you do 2 days before the prom?
No, right, but the test of play is a 14-day window. Now, we've moved it a little bit. We've gone a little shorter, so schools can enjoy their break, having to come out on a break, but we haven't gone to a 16-day window for
But
our
the
school
test
yet.
of sway has to be within 2 days?
It's 48 hours, 2 days, 48 hours prior.
I really think we gotta pitch that name to the state. It really just has
That's
to.
where we got it from.
It's,
No,
okay.
well,
They've been using it.
Okay, they have been using it, okay.
The only other item here, and I'm not sure if I'm stealing Dr. McKee's thunder, is the test over test. Yes, no?
Wait a minute.
Okay.
I have
So-
no thunder, so.
Nothing to be stolen.
So if you look at you've been looking at our dashboard and the minutes, you will see that the Utah County number is in single digits. Right now it's at 7.7. However, the state in the last 2 weeks has changed their metric, right, of what they're gonna use, right? The one that we've seen that's been in the 30s and 20s and teens, right, that they might still see on the state average, because they haven't fully caught up to the county apparently, but they're still using what's called a person over test percentage. The lower percentage that you're now seeing, obviously it looks better, smells better, so therefore it must be better, is test over test is taking the repeat testers. So they're looking at how many times, so that denominator gets bigger, so therefore that number of positive tests becomes smaller. So right now, the metric used to be, as soon as you want to be into a low transmission index, right? We're already high, we want to get to low, I'm passing moderate, you had to get below 10%, right? With that old person over test metric. The new test over test, where they're taking into consideration the repeat testers, which we have every Monday, right? Every school in this district has for every Monday, but it's a statewide number.
Every other Monday.
Every other Monday, well, both schools, this is Timothy Provo, so.
Yeah.
It's in the single digits right now, 7.7, but now that metric has changed. We got to be, to get to low, you got to be below 5.1%. We want to get to moderate, you're at 5.1 to 9.9 or whatever, 9 point, whatever it is, and then you're still in high 13. So there's still those indicators that you have to meet, positives per 100,000 people, how many percentage of people in your county are in ICU beds is an indicator, and then of course now this new test over test. You get 2 out of the 3 met, or as the county gets successful, 2 out of the 3, then that's how we get moved into moderate, and we get moved into low, therefore the restrictions start to lessen. And we start to see things more open.
Are they reporting ICU availability in the safety meeting?
No. We don't have that access. So, the answer is no.
I would assume they would have just reported here in Provo.
Yeah, they might, I mean, we're getting it from the state level, right? Because the state level ICU bed count is what they're referring to, and then the county 100 per 100,000 people in the county percentage has to be a certain level, and then of course, now we have to get below the 5.1 if you want to be in the low category. So that's where, so you might see, oh man, we just cut our percentage in half. We were at 13 last week, now we're down to 7. Yeah, so it's still a lot. If you look at his graphs, amazing celebration. Things are going in the right direction. But there is a little difference in the way that they were calculating them now. So that was the biggest changes of the state public health order. President Hall, I don't know if
I wanted to have people have an update of what the new rules are, so that if we talk about the possibility of going to phase 3, your concerns or if you know what the new rules would be.
Well, there's another matter on that. I told Rebecca and Melanie this the other day, knowing that there's been a discussion that's been starting to occur throughout the community about possibly going to full-on school. I contacted state superintendent Sid Dixon and asked her, is there anything about the high, moderate, and low transmission rate, especially the high transmission rate in Utah County, that would bar us or should discourage us, when I say us, I mean the board, from choosing to go to a phase 3 complete full-on school? Her answer was no, there is nothing of that sort. So you could well imagine that could be a possibility, apparently it is not. So, and if it stays that way, then that further enlightens your discussion on Tuesday the 9th.
So do we want to approach that topic? You guys want to talk this again on, we can discuss it more on the March 9th and have a possibility of a vote? But
I would like to. One thing I would like information on, either in the meantime or that day, we discussed when we moved to 2.5, one reason why we didn't go with the longer days was for the safety of our high schools with eating lunch. And even though our numbers are going down, I would still be concerned about, just a normal lunch period at the high school. So what would be the plan to do so in a safe manner if we were to do that?
Yeah, we would have to do some type of multiple lunches at the high school, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be quite as strict as what we were fearing earlier. We could, rather than doing, for example, full lunches, we could 2 or 3. But one of the goals in coming back full-time is to give kids, of course, a much deeper academic experience, and that's not going to happen if we're constantly disrupting the day.
Right.
So we'll have to put together some type of viable plan that will work.
And I would add that both high schools have prepared and are preparing for multiple lunches. So it's not something that they're not anticipating. They're prepared for it.
Okay, I guess I would personally just like a few more details of how they would plan to handle that, to see if I feel comfortable with it
So,
or not.
I guess by March 9th, if you could have that ready for us.
Provo High School's been on a multiple lunch schedule the last couple of years, and I'm certain that it would Tempe would simply replicate that. They're rather easy to run 2 lunches within a schedule. It gets trickier if you're going to go beyond 2 lunches, if you're going to get to 3 or 4, because it starts to eat into more than just one class period. In an ideal schedule, what you do is you have half of your kids go to lunch at the beginning of the period, the other half at the end of the period, and that way you're only impacting one class period.
Is it feasible to move the elementary schools to phase 3 while keeping the secondary schools to 2.5? I know that's been an issue.
The big challenge of that was going to be transportation, so we would have to study that.
You could do it, but you're going to have to make some bell schedule changes to either shift one earlier or one later, so that they've got time to run those routes for the short day and then turn around and run the long day. So at one time, Troy had outlined some timelines on that, but it wouldn't just be an end-of-day schedule change, it would be you'd have to shift their day in order for bus routes to hit those 2 different schedules. It's not impossible, but there have to be more changes than just that ending bell change.
And maybe this is something we look at, do we think that there's, just not knowing anything about education, it seems that the elementary school kids get a lot more benefit from being in front of a teacher than necessarily the secondary kids who are doing a little bit more self-directed education. So would we get more of a benefit by doing something like that toward those kids? Or do we think it's kind of the same?
That, I asked Alex about that question.
Yeah, let us talk about that on Monday in council meeting.
Okay.
So this is what I would suggest for, did you have a question?
I just want to add,
Yeah.
so the secondary lunches was one of the main concerns that I had for, the other one was building cleaning.
That's what I was
For
gonna ask.
cleaning?
Well, yeah, because
So-
now we had shorter days in order to allow for the buildings to be sanitized.
Yeah.
Where we have done.
We'll have to adjust time. I mean, custodians have known that the day would come that they would probably be dealing with a full-on school anyway. That would mean that their hours would be pushed back in terms of starting times. They haven't been really working too deeply into the evenings. In all honesty, I think the bigger issue is not so much that, but there will be, once again, there will be pressures on us to do rentals and have evening student activities and on and on. We've really put the clamps on that so that we would have time to get the buildings clean at night. With a full-on school, there will always be an expectation that things are like they were, right? And I think that's the big challenge, is are we going to be able to still save enough time on every night, on every day, to get the schools fully sanitized for the next day?
We have enough staff to do that, I mean, minus the extra, or it's not extracurricular, but the outside
Yeah,
agencies coming in.
we are doing it now, so yeah, we do have enough staff, but it would require some adjustments to time.
So potentially, if we do full-time school but not add in the rentals and some of the extra stuff at night, we still could be okay on our cleaning?
I believe so. I mean, we talked about that one time with Jeff Hawkins, who oversees the custodians, and when the board was looking at going to potentially as one option, longer days, Mondays through Thursday, and then leaving Friday alone, that was one of the plans that we had, was to adjust schedules so that we could do that. So it can be done. We just need a little bit of time to make sure we get all the arrangements made.
And are we still hearing a lot of teachers feeling super stressed out about the extra work with kids who are in quarantine and whatnot, or has that really kind of lessened? I mean, our goal was to try and get that to be reduced for them, that stress. And so has that happened? Does anybody have any idea on that? Because I think if we do move to full-day school, it is gonna be something we're gonna hear from teachers.
So I don't think that it can be attributed to quarantining. We did hear in safety committee the other day a report from Miriam Campbell, one of our lead social workers. And she was talking about some of the stress that many teachers are reporting to her. Now, I don't mean to minimize it because I know this is a rough year on teachers, but the stretch between President's Day and spring break is always it is a difficult time for teachers to get through because it's just full on, no breaks, nothing. I mean, the only way they're going to get a break right now is if they have a reaction to the shot. That's pretty much about it, or get the flu or something. So it's a really difficult, pressure-filled time. It's not unheard of being every year like this, but this year in particular. Whether that's attributed to the home study option or quarantining or this or that, there's no way for us to know. We just know that there's some pressure being felt right now.
So in regards, though, to comments towards home study and whatnot, is there any feel, has that pressure been reduced on teachers?
That pressure's been significantly reduced.
Yeah, the student services and HR tried to meet with each school group as they assess their needs with going to 5 days. And I would anticipate we probably need to revisit that. Out of that came, I think we're about at 25 to 30 students who receive a homebound instructor right now. And we're time carding that and supporting that out of student services. And again, you saw that as a line item on Stephanie's budget today, that we've also set aside some of this money to support those additional hours. But we also know that there are some staff who opted to just say, we think we can still continue to sustain this, we don't need to do a homebound teacher. So we know that if we were to go to extended day, I've heard through some of the principals' meetings I've sat in, that we'll need to perhaps say, okay, now I don't have that additional hour and a half or 2 hours to have just kept and maintained some of my homebound kids or home study kids. So we would probably be looking to increase that. And not that we can't, but it worked, and we're kind of in equilibrium, it feels like. We probably need to readdress it to provide more assistance from HR and student services to support our staff with that. So it is a real issue, but we've got money and the resources to do it if we need to extend that.
And I don't mean to minimize it, but I'll tell you that one of the reasons why we would like to get that bonus out, the amount out from the state to teachers in the month of March, is because maybe a little bit of extra money in your pocket at a time that, and you know it's coming, might just lighten the load just a tad. Because there's not much else that does, in all honesty, this time of year. It's a tough time. Alex?
So right now, I visited with the elementary principals yesterday. Most of the students that are in that kind of scenario that you're talking about are either one being addressed through a homebound scenario or working with teaching learning to give them an online curriculum. And there are still some in that kind of area where principals are trying to support them because they're the unique circumstances. But if we do go to those 5 days, principals again will reevaluate those situations and then also look at saying, okay, maybe we do need to do a homebound situation with this family now, or even saying maybe there's some more resources that we need to apply to this family. And so yeah, they would have to relook at that, but that number has significantly been reduced since the last time we visited. It's around that 40 mark or lower. And every day it changes just because different situations of families kind of changes. But for the most part, they've managed it really well.
We don't know necessarily what the impact was altogether on secondary. I don't have any homebound that came through the secondary for home study. I think that they have a lot of work that they've already done on campus. Maybe Todd could speak to what his principals have reported about homebound or home study help that they need.
So
well,
they
can I interject? Sorry, can I interject one quick thing?
Yeah.
Too? I just feel like the chief complaint I was hearing from teachers in secondary was like all this stress about kids who are constantly absent and quarantine and whatnot. So I'm just wondering if that's reduced. Like, is that chief complaint kind of?
I think they still have those concerns. You know, we know we have kids that are disengaged. We know that we have kids that are sort of being quarantined, although at a much lower rate. Honestly, since we made the change into this current phase, I haven't heard one complaint from any school about the situation. And it doesn't mean that there's not a problem that may still exist there. But I think, as Doug has suggested, we maybe have found this happy balance. Right? When we made that switch to this current phase, the secondary schools did a lot of work to reduce those number of kids that were on this kind of this permanent home study situation. And, you know, I want to say that there's no more than maybe a couple of dozen at each school, and they believe that they found a way to manage that. Now, if the board makes the decision to press forward into a phase 3, as Doug has suggested, I think we need to come back to the schools, reevaluate the situation, and ask what additional resources that we can provide to help them through the end of the year.
I think the simplistic answer, and it is very simplistic, is it took effort and changes to move to the current phases, and it will take, believe it or not, even though it's familiar and what we've done before, it'll take some of those adjustments to move back. And that's just...
Jennifer, did you have a question?
That was my main question, my main concern. I would just add to this discussion since on the topic. I talked to a high school teacher the other day, and her perspective was she would love more time with her students, especially with AP students, to have that time in the classroom. But she's conflicted. She's getting a lot of pressure despite what the district might have said. The school, whether it's the counselors or admin or somebody, because it's a core subject, is putting a lot of pressure to keep making videos so kids who are feeling behind can get caught up and things like that. And she's like, I can't keep doing these videos and stuff. So we would just need to again look at expectations and make sure everybody in the system's on the same page.
Just realize too that sometimes teachers self-impose some of those things because we as a district have really been intentional about saying, do not kill yourself in this process. We have resources.
Well, I talked to her about
Use
that,
that, right? And sometimes they're deeply committed to their kids and just really push, and we're grateful for it, but sometimes they've got to also recognize where their limits are too.
Nate, did you have something?
Nah, we can wait.
Okay, I have a question for Jason. When will those who wanted to get the vaccine be finally done? When the 2 weeks after their second shot?
So next week is their last second shot group, and so 2 weeks after that we'll have every group of employees that went through, and that number is about 1,400 people. And then we do have now the option that employees are offered the opportunity to go to the health department to start their process of round 1 and round 2 through the health department. And that's been offered to them for about a week and a half now. So we do have newer employees taking advantage of that, and we also have volunteers, I guess is a way to put it, but people who work very consistently in our schools who are not our employees who are going through that process too.
Okay, March 17th. So March 17th? Okay.
I just have one more thing for March 9th meeting. I would love to hear from or hear a report from the health department. I'd like to hear from the experts on what their recommendations. We don't have to necessarily follow them, but I'd love to hear what they have to say about going back to school full time and all of that. I don't know if that's impossible, but I'd love to be able to hear.
We'll find out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so it sounds like we do want to discuss this on March 9th.
And schedule a vote.
And schedule a vote.
I mean, I don't want to discuss it, but.
So one last thing you might consider in all this, the group that we've been most concerned about, where we've seen the most in terms of outbreak has been the extracurriculars in the high school. Our winter seasons are coming to an end, and all of our activities, starting in March, will move to outdoors, where we know you're 20 times less likely to catch the virus than you are when you're indoors. So I think that's a factor to consider as you're thinking about the group that's most likely to be impacted. They're going to be far less impacted because all the activities are outside.
Okay, I will make my comment.
Okay.
So, I was at the community council meeting for Timpview yesterday, and every parent and every teacher and every administrator was like, I wish you would move to phase 3 for my elementary school kids, but my high school kid can't really deal with the change. And the teachers all said that they don't want to deal with the change. That's not necessarily dispositive, like we have to follow that, but it is a thing. I've never had a problem with moving to more school, but we also should think about, okay, it's 4th semester and 4th term, everyone's burnt out of school already. Are we going to add the time there? Are we going to get much bang for our buck? Or are people going to be like, well, I got football practice, or I got gym. So it's outside of school, and I don't think it necessarily helps education. We have to measure that, and we have to think about superintendent might be one thing, but from the parents I've heard, they've said, at least the elementary schools, in those meetings, they've been like, oh, we're getting near the end of the year, let's have a little bit more time with our teachers so they can do their language or whatever. But in the high school, it was like pretty much universal when I asked the question. So, and it hasn't been that way at this point. It's always been, kind of teachers on one side, parents on the other.
And it's just fatigue. That's the reason behind
fatigue.
it.
It's like it's fourth semester and fourth term. Everyone's burnt out.
Why make the change now?
Why make the change now?
Okay, we will put it on March 9th. All right, is there any further discussion on that? Okay, summer program.
Okay, so I have 2 summer programs I need to discuss with you today. I'm going to start with the Camp Big Springs discussion. Alex and Bill Sprunger and Chad and I met back in, I think it was probably late November. At that particular time, I contacted my 2 counterparts in neighboring districts, and I was told, we're not even thinking about that right now. You may or may not be aware that as we go back to last July, and the board passed a resolution that we will follow the direction of the health department. Alex and, was it Alex and Chad? Well, I'm going to let you talk about it. You talked with Suzanne about the prospect of running Camp Big Springs. What was the message you got back?
So at that time when we visited with Suzanne, she was pretty clear in saying that, and it was right around the same time that we had kind of reduced some of the quarantine restrictions. She said, in the school setting, there's a lot of control. We can look at the environment, we have a lot of control over who's in, who's out, what happens, controlling a mask. We can monitor, we can clean, we can sanitize, we have a place where kids are washing hands. But that doesn't mean that we need to lighten everything and all of a sudden just be loose. She said, all that's saying is that within a controlled environment, we're pretty good at controlling what happens. And so then we started to talk and ask about Big Springs and explain kind of our setup and what it would look like. And she just kind of shook her head and said, man, I wouldn't go there. There's so many things you cannot control in that environment, from wearing masks and sleeping conditions to washing hands outside, to sitting on a bus, as well as just being able to say, right, the transmission index was pretty high as well. So she was under the guise of saying, I wouldn't even go there at this point.
So we've kicked around this idea and we've asked ourselves, what can we do and what can we not do? The biggest challenge with Camp Big Springs is the sleeping arrangements and the need to do social distancing. Because right now we have kids who lay down essentially next to one another, and I'm just using round numbers here just to help with the math and the perspective. If a sleeping bag in one kid's space takes about 3 feet, and then somebody else is next to them and that's another 3 feet, and another person is next to them, you've got about 3 kids per every 9 or 10 feet. At this point, we would have to reduce that by 2/3 to be able to maintain the 6-foot social distancing, especially at night when kids, like we all do, I assume we all do, cough or sneeze or whatever in the middle of the night, and who knows if they're actually going to be having the masks on at the time. Some people will object to, I don't sleep at home with the mask on, I can't sleep here with the mask on. So we're concerned about those things. We have heard since that Alpine is not running, at least that's what Chad told me yesterday, not running.
He's here, by the way.
Yeah.
You want to report on your conversations with our counterparts?
So in talking to Alpine, they're not going to hold their Clear Creek camp. And I talked to the director over Shadow Mountain down in Nebo today. And he said that their board is still undecided. So there hasn't been an official declaration down there that I know of.
So the thing to remember about Nebo is that Nebo of the 3 districts has had the lowest transmission rates. Their numbers have been comparatively much better than us and Alpine. And as well, one of the options that they've looked at is a day camp, or something which does not include overnight. Now, I don't know if that's even possible for us to consider here, because I don't know that students would come to a school not to go up to Camp Big Springs, to be out in the wilderness. And so right now, what I'm going to suggest is that given the direction / guidance / suggestions from the health department, and also knowing what we know, I'm going to suggest that we should probably be putting our efforts into our summer school program. We could probably call upon many of the teachers who would do Camp Big Springs to help us out with the summer school program, at least ask them. And but the big question that I have is, people have asked, well, could you do a day camp? Yeah, we could do whatever, but will it appeal to the same students in the same way as what we've done in the past? Secondly, could we just do it 2 or 3 days? We could do something for 2 or 3 days, but we would like to follow the guidance of the health department and stay away from overnight. And then I think the other questions that come up are, couldn't you just do something? Could we do something? Could we go into July? Could we stretch this out? We're in a struggle getting teachers who run Camp Big Springs going into July. We've already consulted with one of the lead teachers there just to get his perspective on it. And so that's where we are right now. It's not good news. It's not what anybody wants to hear. But the fact is, I do think that if we're going to be putting our money into something and our efforts into something, we know that there is a powerful academic, so I'm transitioning here just in this statement, there's a powerful academic need for us to do something which is a little bit more learning and standards oriented, standards in terms of what kids should have been learning all year long, and doing that. We think that our money would be best served by really putting together a kicking summer school this summer, as opposed to trying to pretend things are normal at Camp Big Springs, because they're not going to be. Whether it's because of hand washing issues, whether it's because of proximity, sleeping arrangements, whatever, we feel pretty nervous about this one. So, and I know it doesn't address the issue of last year's 5th graders didn't get it, or this year's 5th graders wouldn't get it, but we're living in a different environment right now, so I don't have a solution. And I share that simply because I'm saying it looks like we're not alone in this in Utah County. So, questions?
Well, it's not a question, but, so my daughter was in 5th grade last year. It was really sad she missed out on it. I was hopeful she could at least get some kind of makeup this year. I've gotten a couple emails from parents of current 5th graders wondering if it's gonna happen. I get what you're saying, and logically, like, I agree. But the sense I've gotten, knowing so many families with kids this age, is kind of like with our high schoolers, when we talk about how they missed out on proms and homecomings and those rites of passage. It's a thing that they've been looking forward to. All the elementary schools, they get their one shot. I mean, I would love if there's a way we could at least give them one day. They get bussed up there, get to have a long day up there, do something great, that they got to do something in Big Springs. If there's a way we can make that happen, maybe first gauge interest from parents. Would they want to participate if it looked like that this year? I would think we could do that and still do an awesome summer.
Let us look at that as an option.
To piggyback on what she's saying, could we test the kids prior to going?
It would be like test the sway.
Yeah, test the sway, test the camp, test the,
I don't know that I know the answer to that. I think I've got to go to health.
But I don't know if because I know that they were saying that middle school kids are not allowed to participate right now because they're not doing test the sway with middle school kids at all right now.
So that's my question, is given the ages, is the test indicative of any kind of, concerning situation? Will it identify with any kind of context the virus? I don't know. We can find out. At one point also, Chad, we talked about what's your drop dead date for needing to make a decision about?
It's already, it's now. Because to get everything ordered, we're already, by now we've already started registration. And we have
and by now you're already laying plans to get up there and make some improvements. if we were to watch these trends, maybe have yet another visit with Suzanne just sometime in the next 2 weeks, and then if things look favorable, we could have we could consider it at least something. Is that all right with you?
Can I add to that? I mean, I think it's going to be, you mentioned the struggle to get teachers to help with that, because we're trying to get the teachers that probably will want to work or they need for summer school. And I imagine the summer school programs aren't going to be so large that this will be impossible, but child nutrition is also going to have to come up with workers to cover summer school. They usually provide meals for Big Springs. It's just something to think about, that there's auxiliary pieces to this. If child nutrition isn't doing Big Springs, that frees up their employees to do the summer school programs. I don't know, they had all their staff work, not all their staff, but a large number of their staff work all summer last summer, when they usually don't, because they have the free meals. Just another thing that kind of layers into the discussion, I think.
Never hear.
I was gonna say, I think it's also important to remember that Camp Big Springs has not, it's not automatic. It's been apply and hope you get in. As a principal, many of my students didn't get in at Sunset View. My own family, my nephew didn't get in. So in the past couple of years, they've really tried to increase the numbers so that we can get, but that's only been for a couple of years. So there are many students from years past who didn't get to go to Big Springs even when it was running, which I don't know, I think it's just one factor, that it's not a guarantee, but it's part of our normal curriculum.
But can I do this? Can I promise you we'll look into it, but I can't promise you I can solve it. Is that okay? I mean, I think we do owe it to our current fifth graders to at least consider one more time. Have things changed enough that it would change what we considered back in whatever it was when we met, early January?
Yeah, it was in January that we had the conversation with Suzanne. And again, her biggest concern was controlling the environment. And she said in the school setting, like even when we're talking about summer school, we asked about some of those things with charity. Even then, Suzanne was still concerned about even doing field trips, because again, once you leave that school setting, your control of the environment and the ability to ensure some of this cleanliness and safety things happen, you lose.
And that's mask quarantine.
Yeah, and that was the other big thing, was the mass quarantine. That's where she was really
doesn't apply.
Yeah. Once you leave the school setting, all of those parameters that pertain to the school setting, you lose, and it becomes a little bit more of a struggle. So, yeah, and we did that, that was in January.
I learned how to swear at Big Springs.
Son alone. Hey, Nate, what did you learn at that?
I'm sitting right by the recorder, so I don't want to share it. It was very important. My Big Springs.
So I'll transition quickly. I want to be done here in 15 minutes. I'll transition quickly to the fact that we have had 3 planning meetings, 3 kind of philosophical, 2 have been more philosophical discussions. One was a really extensive planning meeting about what we're trying to do this summer. We see, well, I'm not going to speak for everybody, I'll speak for myself. I see this to be different than what we've dealt with in the past. We have, in my opinion, we have a bit of an educational crisis right now. I'm not going to tell you how many, because I think I'll get quoted, but I have a belief that we have a very large number of students who have missed significant educational opportunities this past year, and we have to appeal to a larger number than we ever had before, significantly larger, and that their gap is probably more acute than it has been before, because they've lost entire months in front of a teacher, or we know we've got a number of students who have been quite simply disengaged from school. They're not coming. They're not doing their work. They're not interacting with teachers on a regular basis or in any kind of deep, meaningful way around learning. So my concern is that we have to give thought to building a program that is unlike what we've done before. More volume with kids, more aggressive hunting them down, that's a bad way to put it, but inviting them to this, aggressively seeking them out and inviting them in, and running a program that really is about academics, but making it as fun as we possibly can. I was asked to put together a few concepts, so I put a couple pages here. I don't want to throw this whole, to talk about this whole thing right now, but I will tell you that last Friday afternoon, we took, I'll email this to you if you want to know context, but we think that we're going to be able to run a flexible kind of summer school, unlike what we've done before. But I want to tell you this. Emery was probably the first one who said it, and I agree. This is not about trying to make up a year's worth, or at least a partial year's worth of deficiency in one summer school setting. We're going to have to change how we deliver education next year to include much more in terms of interventions and trying to get a read on what kids know and what they don't know, and working with them at that point. Almost like a needs assessment per student. In fact, I would equate it to what special ed does on a daily basis, in all honesty. Because we're going to have a lot of students who are going into next year's classes assuming they know this year's material, and they don't. And we're setting them up to fail if we do not take an intervention type of approach on this. So that will mean that we have to think differently about not just this summer, but how do we deliver education to students here next year, maybe the year beyond, maybe the year beyond. We all can probably theorize about what it would take to make up the learning gaps of some kid that we've seen not going to school on a very regular basis and now goes back to school. So I think we all have an understanding that this is going to be difficult. We want to introduce the concepts of some of these concepts to a program this summer. We want to start it. We want students to want to be there. We know that there can be motivational rewards of some kind to students who can take part. We know what's legal and what isn't legal. We know that some students will want to go simply because they have a thirst for learning, but we're looking first to get the ones who need to be there because of the gaps, the learning gaps that they've incurred. So we're concerned about it. We're slowly putting the structures together, and so these are just philosophical questions and statements that I made saying that if we're going to do this differently and better than we've ever done it before, what will that look like? I'll email you this if you really are bored tonight, can't go to sleep, go ahead and read it. But
did you include the specialties that elementary kids are not getting this year?
We are trying to do that in the afternoon. We're trying to designate half the day to have more of a focus on core and half the day to have more of a focus on enrichment. And enrichment can also be intervention, but it probably will be more enrichment along the line of what you're describing. Yeah. Our other challenge is going to be we've got to finish our planning here pretty darn soon because we've got to get teachers hired. We have to survey our teachers. Anne-Marie and Jason and Caleb have been working on a survey that we want to send out to students identified by principals to say we want to invite you here. Here are the things we're looking at doing. Would you be interested in this, 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 or this? We're trying to get those things out. We're looking at every elementary school for sure, well actually every school, having some kind of option, whether it's, Alex just left. Todd, do you remember those? There were three of them. Jason, do you remember?
Half day, full day,
Half day, full day.
at-home program.
And then kind of more of an online, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're giving them options. We want them to look at their clientele, their students, and figure out which is the approach which best fits that. I mean, they're not that different, but I don't know that Westridge has the same need as Timpanogos. So just turn it over to the teachers, the principals, get them to work with somebody on their staff who's going to run the thing, and then really decide what kind of program this looks like. Those of you who were in the meeting last week, any of you go ahead and pitch in if you think I missed something significant here.
I had a question about in the fees, summer school isn't usually included unless you're at a Title I school. So how is that going to be
That's some money.
covered?
We're planning on, that's some money to pay for the costs here. That's, any buses, any transportation needs, child nutrition needs. Again, for Title I schools, those things are already covered, but for non-Title I schools, we will cover them. And then teacher costs, and there may be some motivational rewards. I don't want to go into that right now, but I can talk to you individually about that. We know that sometimes getting something will help encourage a student to show up. So it's not always about extrinsic rewards, and that's not what this program is, but there may be some little incentivization of that, incentivizing of that might help. So anyway, so we're in the process of building this, and I would hope that by the end of March we have a program that's pretty much finalized and ready to bring to you. We may have to get your approval on expenditures because this will not be a cheap program to run. Charity, in past years, how much do you normally spend on summer school out of the grants that you get and, working with Michelle?
Just straight up cookies, so bear
Good,
with me.
good.
In previous years, we were close to around $30,000 for summer school. In recent years, the money's kind of dwindled. We're about $12,000 to $15,000 a summer program. Whatever we do here will far exceed whatever we've been able to do in recent years.
And so you may remember from Stephanie's list, in the first years, I think she allocated around $600,000. So it's not like we don't have the money to do it. We are trying to think big and get lots of kids there, because the more we can at least introduce this summer, we think that we'll be a little further ahead in the fall. We're counting on it. We won't be able to close every gap this summer, but we might be able to reignite the interest in learning, which will set us up better for the fall. We're hoping. We're also being careful about, like I said, reaching out to families and getting their kids there. We're thinking through things like childcare and those kinds of things. What can we do to truly support families to get the children there? So it's a comprehensive approach. It's not easy, and we've done good work in the past, but now we're dealing with a problem that is monumentally larger than it's been in the past. So that's kind of the overview here.
I went to summer school one year. My mother made us go, and my brother and I. And I do remember it being fun. I don't remember it being hard, but I remember it being fun. Although this was in the 80s at Major Elementary School, so it's been a while. So
Okay.
that was my memory, is that it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then my grades ended up being better when I started 6th grade.
Right.
I can't think of anything more important than this, so I hope we're successful. Like getting the kids that need to be there, which that's gonna be the hard part.
Well, if we can, I'll tell you, I believe if we can, we need to weave in experiential learning as much as possible. I mean, Alex already mentioned about field trips and those kinds of things. If we can get a handle on that, I would like teachers to be able to, if they want to take kids to the zoo or something, and then they can do a lot of assignments and work following up on what they did at the zoo, fantastic. But we don't know that that's going to be an option given cleaning issues on buses or even access to a zoo or whatever kind. So we just don't know yet what those activities might be. But we do live in a place where we can access universities and art galleries and farms and other locations, an aquarium not far away, a zoo a little farther away. If we can do those kinds of things, we have the money to do it this year. We've never had the budget to do some of the things that we wanted to do. Now we do, and now we've got COVID to, of course, navigate. So that's my goal, that's our vision, but I can't promise it's going to go like that because of other factors.
So you could always bring some of those groups in, or like a robotics, something that the teacher could work with somebody.
Any number of things, yeah, you're right.
From when to when are you talking summer school?
Right now we're talking June.
Just June?
June, and then possibly, what do you call it, a quick start or something?
Jump start or a smart start for a couple of weeks right before school starts. And full day was around 1:30 was our term for full day. It may extend a little longer if some community partners can help.
We're also talking with a couple of external organizations who might help us out in the afternoon. that's still a little ways off, so I won't mention this right now. But, and this will be elementary set and middle school and high school. Now, high school with kids who are pursuing credit recovery, they probably aren't going to be all that interested in the trip to go skip over there. But maybe, might be a nice diversion, but yeah. But we do know that they all have a need for credit recovery. So Todd led the group with secondary last week. Alex and I led the group for elementary last week. So we feel like we're making progress, and we've set a goal to, by the end of March, have something really ready to go. So,
Good luck.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your support. This is not going to be cheap, and it's not going to be easy, but it's the right thing to do.
We got $8 million, so.
It's well spent money though, I think, for what it is.
I agree.
So, okay,
Anything else from you folks?
I think there was a piece about also looking at some social emotional stuff in this one, get ready for the fall.
Yeah. And we're actually hoping that the experiences that the teachers are able to accomplish in June with this program might also be things that they can use in the fall. We're counting on that. We're looking at this not so much as a reset, but as kind of as a pivot. So we've got that chance, so let's do it. Okay, I'll shut up.
okay, just quickly before we have a motion to adjourn, we'll just take a 5-minute break, and then we'll meet back here at 2:30. So is there a motion to adjourn?
You mean before we do our executive?
Before we go into executive session. So we'll meet back here at 2:30 for executive session.
I move we adjourn this session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. We are adjourned. Sorry.
Should I pause it?